I'm Alicia Galati, podcast strategist and host of Top 100 Marketing Podcast, Listeners to Leads. Podcasting can feel very one-track and lonely. So my goal with Listeners to Leads is to not only support you in growing and monetizing your show by turning your listeners into leads, but also to be able to navigate podcasting in a way that feels right for you. Join me every week on your favorite podcast listening app.
Louise and I are so excited to bring you this episode. The world feels heavy right now, and we wanted to dive into the magic of finding light in the chaos. You know those times where a really good laugh or just a simple joy can completely shift your energy even when things feel heavy? Yeah. We're celebrating those moments. Plus, we get real about our relationships with our bodies. We talk a lot about embodiment, and we want to get real about what it means to be in relationship and how societal systems try to control our bodies and what that means when we reclaim our power through joy, rest, and curiosity. So whether you're looking for a little bit of hope and inspiration or just a good belly laugh, this episode is for you. Hi there. Welcome to the Empowered and Embodied Show. I'm Kim Romain.
And I'm Louise Neal. We're two transformational coaches who are also fellow travelers on the path of growth and self-discovery. And we're inviting you along for the ride.
That's right. We're right here in the trenches with you, navigating the ups and downs of life. And each week we'll be sharing our own experiences, bringing you conversations with amazing guests, and exploring insights and strategies that have helped us find more clarity, confidence, and ease in our lives.
And trust us, we do not have it all figured out. We're learning and growing right alongside you.
So if you're ready to rise above the chaos, doubt, and confusion that sometimes life throws our way,
and step into a more empowered and embodied version of yourself,
then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Kim Romain, joined as always by my other co-host.
That would be me. I'm Louise.
Louise, it is just us today.
I know. I like these little, what do you call them? Tête-à-tête?
Tête-à-tête. Yeah. Tête-à-tête.
Yeah, that. I'm so French.
Come to Quebec.
And struggle with French.
Exactly. That's pretty much my world. Louise, what are we celebrating this week?
You know what I'm celebrating, Kim? You and I just had a really good laugh. And I even have still little wet tears here by my eyes. And regardless of what's going on in the world or in our lives and the chaos that is ensuing, you and I, we get to sit and laugh and have a moment of just that connection. And when we can connect through laughter, you just filled my cup, the rest of the weekend, the rest of the day, the rest of the week. Yeah, fantastic. That's what I'm celebrating.
I very much the same, right? It's and thank you. So Louise had shared a reel with me that nailed it pretty much. And, I feel so much the same right now. One of the things that I keep having conversations with my clients and people that are in my circle, my world, my networks is chaos is going to chaos. It is. And, right. If you listen to astrologers, if you read human design, if you go into the shit show that we're in and that is coming, it is, everybody wishes it was good news. And it was, welcome to 2025. This year's better. It's not. And a lot of people are feeling it, whether or not you believe in that stuff, people are feeling it. And there's a lot of reasons we're feeling it. Around the globe, right? Particularly here in North America, there's a shit show to be had. Yep. And in the midst of the darkness, there is always light. There is always light. It may be hard to find sometimes, but we look for that. We look for the helpers. We look for the light, right? And that lightness of being, that ability to bring laughter and joy and play, even in the midst of what feels chaotic and dark and heavy, is the human experience. And so I'm very much celebrating that as well. It's a good fucking laugh. Like just a really good fucking laugh. Right?
Yeah. And it's so interesting because oftentimes when like things are chaotic, we're so focused on the chaos, right? We're so focused on like, how do we get through and that part of it. And yet how we get through is to actually not be all consumed by it, is to be able to find those places where we can be grounded, where we can be right in our bodies, in communities that support us through laughter, through right friendship, whatever that is for you. But that's how we get through it. But yet I think our humanness sometimes is like, that's when we shut down and get so consumed by that. So it is like both things exist at the same time. And I think they actually need one another.
Yeah. And I get this sense that we overcognate, we overthink.
What?
What? As human beings, we depend so much on this brain of ours to quote unquote get us through things, right? To help us figure things out, to help us get ahead, to, understand and make decisions. And yet it is just one small part of our totality of our being, right? If we just talk about the physical aspect of our bodies, there is so much more information, so much more data, right? I know you love data. I know, right? It's sexy. There's so much more that our bodies are giving us that go beyond what our brains are saying to us, right? They're really good. Our brains are really, really good at filling in the blanks, at creating stories, at creating narratives, at trying to parse through data. But it's just like ChatGPT. If you throw it in there, it's not going to come back with a big belly laugh. It doesn't have the ability to do that. Not yet, right? It may in the future, who knows? But at this point, its learning doesn't allow it to be human. And to have those nuanced sensations that we experience in our body. When you laugh, something changes in your body.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It feels fucking good.
Yeah. It's it's that whole separation. I think that, these last few episodes and our few guests that we've had on the show is really about understanding kind of that separation of like, how do we for a moment put down this very heady, very logistical part of our bodies for a moment and then start to really tune into the rest of our bodies and the rest of the knowledge that we possess and how much knowledge we actually have. And then how do we use that to move us through something that's maybe crunchy or chaotic?
Yeah. I've loved these last few. I mean, I love all of our guests. Let's be real. And these last few weeks have been throughout January, as we've stepped into 2025, these conversations have been so deeply connective. That's not even a word, but it maybe it is.
Yeah,
well,
it
connective
is.
tissues. I guess it is a word.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe not how I used it. But it connects us back to ourselves in a way that we often don't talk about, right? So we've talked about rest, we've talked about pleasure, we've talked about movement, we've talked about all these different things. We've talked about understanding cycles in our bodies. What has it been like for you coming into the age that you are now, that we are now? I know. What has it been like for you to cultivate a relationship with your body and to understand these nuanced places, these crunchy, but also the pleasurable places. Like, what has it been like for you?
Well, so let's just be clear. I'm not anywhere at like the end or a destination, right?
No.
And so it's not like I can look back and go, my journey to my body and embodiment, it was great. It's like, no, I'm in the middle of it all, still learning and understanding what knowledge my body has to tell me, but also like this deeper understanding of like, how do I start to bring forth some of that knowledge? So it's not just an understanding of what's going on. It's like, it's also like, how do I use my body, not abuse it, but use it in a way that feels really, really good. And so I think when I try to understand what's going on with my menopause transition right now, like there's a lot of information out there, a lot of resources, a lot of people telling me what's happening or how to fix things. But sure, that's like maybe a whole other episode around like this whole idea of fixing ourselves in menopause. But as I start to understand kind of what's going on, it's that knowledge that's really helpful for me, yet not the whole story. Because if I'm not really, like the understanding is one thing, but if I'm not really using it or embodying that information, then I'm not really going anywhere.
I hear integration, like
integrating
it. Yeah.
There's a lot of moments lately where I get super frustrated with myself. And when I can stop and pause and just come back into my body, it's like there's an acceptance and a self-love there that I never had before. I don't know if I had to be 51 to get it. But it's it's okay. Like, this isn't how it's going to be forever. It's like, just before we hopped on, I spent 5 minutes looking for my coffee cup and another few minutes looking for my phone. Those are the two things that go missing all the time. All the time. They get up and walk away. And it's these kinds of like, that's okay. Like, I'm not going crazy. It's just part of my transition right now. And there's an acceptance there, but a deep acceptance that comes from not just the knowledge, but that integration of that knowledge. Yeah. Like that's, and it's, I don't even know if I'm in the middle of the journey. I don't know if there's a destination necessarily in this journey,
I don't think
right?
there is. Yeah. And when I asked the question, it wasn't like, what has this been like? But it's like, what is the process that you're in? Because we just like we don't talk about menopause, we, also don't talk about getting our periods still nearly enough. We don't talk about any of the female reproductive cycle. We also don't talk about the social emotional aspects. Like, we don't talk about it publicly. We talk about these things privately.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're always in process. There's always something shifting and changing. And yet we have these meat bags, right? I love that term. These meat bags that wander through life with us. And I know for me, I have not always had the healthiest of relationships with this body, with this vessel. And it did take a lot of cognitive work, but it is right. I found my way to somatics many, many years ago, which was scary at first. And I know a lot of my clients are like, I don't know if I can do that, because we feel so disconnected from this experience, what we experience inside of our bodies. And yet it is constantly in flux, constantly a process. And so the question really was about, what has that process of finding connection with your body been like?
Yeah. The word that came up, as you were talking, is this self-trust. that I'm going to say need, because I think it is a need, the self-trust that we need to cultivate within ourselves so that we can actually start to listen to the knowledge from below the neck. And the systems that we're currently in have cut us off from that. And that's where we hold so much power in that knowledge in our bodies. And yeah, that whole recognition. I look at my body completely differently now than I did when I was in like my 30s, completely differently. And it's not because I'm no longer fertile. I never carried a story around like I'm only a woman because I can give birth to the next generation. I never carried that story, but a lot of us do. But when I look at my body, I appreciate and I want to honor it so differently than I have in the past. And again, I don't know if that's like, is that what's going on? Is that part of menopause? Is that part of like being like a wise old crone? Or like what is that? I don't know yet. Or is it the work that I've done, that you and I have done? Is that the work that we put out into the world to help people do that at any age? I'm not really sure of the answer. Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I'll be really honest. This process of having a relationship, an active relationship with my body, I know when it stopped and I was 12 or 13 and it stopped with a Polaroid picture of myself from the side that my mom, because at that time, right, everybody was eating wheat germ and being thin, my mom took a Sharpie and showed me what my body would look like if I didn't have a belly, if I didn't have the hips. And I know at that moment, I disconnected from my body because I saw that there was something wrong with it. That's what I had physical proof. Look, there's something wrong with your body. Let's just chop it off. And we can do that. We can just chop it right off. It wasn't until I definitely was working on my relationship with my body throughout my adulthood, probably through my first marriage somewhat. And then I continued to be dissociated in different ways because he body shamed me as well. And then into my relationship with my husband, with Danny, that started to blossom again because he loved me and saw me for me. Like I never felt so seen as from my husband. He was the first person who took all of me in and loved me in a way that I had never experienced. So I think that's really, and I was, how old was I? 37 when I met him. No, I don't know how the hell I was something when I met him. I was in my 30s. And I started to learn then that there is an opportunity to actually choose how I experienced, not saw, but experienced my body. And this came from, in my 20s and 30s, I definitely experienced a lot of pleasure in my body, but I weaponized that. Mm-hmm. And in my later 30s, pleasure took on a different tenor, a different feel, a different, flavor. And then I started to learn that the body could experience so many things. I always had a deep connection to the visualization part of somatics for being able to I started with IFS, internal family systems, and being able to feel where and experience where the different parts of me are. But starting to, outside of a therapeutic setting, starting to experience my body in a different way, probably started in my late 30s. And then that relationship started to come online when I got curious about it. And I was like, oh, That's interesting. What does that mean? What is that showing me? Without, and showing up without judgment, right?
Yeah.
Just curiosity. And it is a process. And today, where I'm at, definitely, I'm still in process, right? I still have those moments that I imagine that Sharpie taking off parts of my body. And then I go, what the fuck is that about? That's not healthy. What would it feel like? And that's where then I use my tools that I have now, right? Hands on body, gentle loving of myself, and allowing myself movement and flow inside of my body so that it feels the love that it dissociated from. Whether that love was there or not, I couldn't feel it from my body. I felt it in other ways, but not from my body. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It is the coming together of those parts, right? That can really amplify, I think, the messages that it's sending out all the time. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me, thinking back to the last few guests that we've had, tell me some moments that have really stood out for you.
Well, that's so hard, Louise. It's so hard for me because I get in the moment and I'm like, that was fantastic. And I can feel it, and that exists in my body still. I can't necessarily tell you the words that were said. What I can say is the feeling that I had. So I think it was 2 episodes ago with Melanie. There was the feeling that I had while we were recording that episode was excitement and lit up. Now, we were talking about pleasure, right? But there was also there was just an energy of buoyancy and light. And I really enjoyed being in that energy and that experience. It did feel pleasurable. And then with the episode we just did last week with staff, where it had a very different person, very different cadence, but we were also talking a lot about rest. And it felt nourishing, and I felt very held, energetically held in that space in a different way. So more than what was said was what I experienced while I was with them. How about for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, those are the things that we do remember more than the words that are said, right? One of the things that I took away from our interview with Steph was this idea of like, it was around mindset, right? And how do we use meditation and use that deep moment of presence to be able to actually change our mindsets around what's happening. And I think this kind of plays into the chaos, right? That's going on either in the world or that could be going on personally too. But I really thought that was so interesting because prior, when we talked to Melanie and we talked to Lizzie, it was like body energy and like, yeah, I'm like owning it and like, when I am woman, hear me roar, kind of a lot of that too. And I thought it was so interesting because with Steph, it was like, ooh, but it's not just about being in your body and the pleasure and the understanding and the knowledge that's held. It's the mindset that we have that actually allows us to slip into our bodies. And when we don't have that mindset, we can't even do that. We can listen to Melanie bonk until the cows come home, but if we don't have the mindset to really understand the knowledge that our bodies have and like how do we bring that out and that it's okay to feel pleasure like that, we can never we're shooting ourselves in the foot, right? We can never truly embody ourselves if we don't have that mindset. So I don't know. I thought it was really interesting to say like, yeah, bodies. And then it's like, ooh, but the mindset, the rest that we need, the quietness that we need to come back to presence allows us to truly experience pleasure.
Well, and the body doesn't exist in isolation. None of these pieces and parts do, right? We have our mind, we have our body, we have our soul, our spirit, whatever part. There are different belief systems that will say that we have, 3, 5, or 7 or 9 different bodies that come with us, right? So we have our physical body, we have our mental body, we have our emotional body, we have our energetic body, we have our spiritual body, right? These are all different aspects of self that compose our body, right? When we think about the auric, right? When we think about what is the energy, and again, depending on how woo you want to go, there is energy. You can feel the energy that is around you. And sometimes it feels very close, and sometimes it feels very expansive. That's part of your body. That's part of you. And that gives you even more, right? It's like talking about that relationship with our body. What is the relationship that our body experiences as it comes into contact with the rest of the world? So with our energy field around us, like we have a connection here, even though it's through a screen, our energy is flowing back and forth. How are we experiencing that somatically in the visceral of our body? But how are we also experiencing it on an energetic, on a soul level, on a cognitive level? That's the totality of that experiencing. And that's how we truly embody, is coming into that, in my opinion, is coming into seeing all of those aspects, the mind, the body, and the soul, the spirit, again, using all of those ideas of like, what are the different levels of body that we have?
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about this podcast, right? Is that we get to explore each one of those bodies. We get to talk to people and hear about their journey in whatever realm they want to explore with us. Sometimes their expertise is in something different, but we explore what that is with them. And we get to explore all of those parts of us that make up us. And then through that, which I love, and this is why we come together, is because I believe only then do we really empower ourselves to be able to like go out into the world and to be able to do that. It's such a yin and yang, like they're so connected that, right, only through embodiment do we empower ourselves. And then through empowerment are we able to embody. And it's like, yeah, it's just this cool thing. But yeah, I'm super excited for our next bunch of guests. And I hope people like just connect. And I would love to hear who your favorite guest has been, dear listener. And go back, and if you can't remember exactly what somebody said, share with us what feeling you recall when you listen to a particular episode. Yeah. Love that. I love that.
So Louise, I do want to, you know me, I want to go in a tangent here for just a second. What do you think makes people want to control other people's bodies?
Oh, dear Lord.
Because we're talking about empowerment and embodiment. And what comes to me is that's fantastic. And we could stay in this beautiful, joyful, juicy place. And we live in a world right now around the world where a lot of people are trying to control other people's bodies.
Well,
why?
That's been like that for until the day is long.
Yeah.
Really, right? We're talking about patriarchy, and we're talking about that system that puts women lower than men. And the way that patriarchy does that is to create that strife, create that chaos with our bodies. Oh, because when we're truly integrated and truly embodying who we are, like the things that we do are fucking amazing. Like the world changes when that happens. And so in order to, right, keep the system, it breaks us up. And this patriarchy isn't just men. Like, let's just be clear,
Right.
right?
100%.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the system that in order for some people to think that they are better, higher, faster, they break down other people. That's the system that is created. That's what I think anyways. Like when we're talking about what's going on in the world, it's very much a mirror of that system. And yet here we are saying, but there's other ways. There is another way, but plural, there are other ways to be able to feel amazing in your body, to feel right love in your life, to have the community and the relationships that feed you, and to be able to define success or accomplishment on your own terms because it's your own life. Like that's ultimately what we're trying to bring here through our businesses and through coaching, but also through this podcast. But that's what I see. Like, we're not just talking about a couple of people, right? We're talking about a system that is it's just not working for us anymore. That's really what we're
Well,
talking
it hasn't
about.
been working forever.
Sure.
Right. And when we look at these misogynistic and patriarchal systems and right systems of oppression, when we're talking about women, LGBTQ, BIPOC, like we're talking about needing to be in control, right? A group, a select group, small select group of people who hold the power. And this can be, again, right, we're seeing this play out on global stages across the world, hence global. And and we also see this in families, right? We see this in businesses. We see this in relationships where an individual or a small group of individuals, in my opinion, have not done the work that allow them to feel truly empowered and truly, right, that place of self-empowerment. They are not embodied, so they are not in touch with their own wounding, their own pain. And yet they have a considerable amount is how I read it. And therefore they feel the need to control and create pain in others so that they can in the hopes that they feel better. And in many ways, right, it's a drug. It is a way to stay high, quote unquote, so that they are not needing to feel and experience what those of us who do this type of work, and I don't mean just the work of our businesses and the work we do with our clients, but that internal work to get to a place where we are connected to self. And I think it's important that we talk about this when we're talking about our own, like we were sharing our own unique stories on how we connect with our bodies and what our bodies even mean. But I wanted to just explore a little bit about this place of yes, and we can do this work individually, like as Kim, as Louise, or with our clients. But if there are people listening that want to do this work but are afraid or are doing this work under one of the systems of oppression that are directly impacting them, like how do we find that light, right? We were talking at the beginning, that light and dark. How do we find that light to continue doing the work that is hard work when we're already feeling oppressed and held down? That's a really big question.
It is. Yeah, I don't know.
To me, it goes back to that place of laughter, of finding the light, of finding the helpers, of there's an aspect of hope that needs to still be there, right? There's so much feeling of despair, right? And yet a simple act, a friend of mine recently talked about the joy of watching a WNBA game. And that just gave her absolute joy. And she's like, I haven't had hope or joy in a really long time. And that brought it back to me. So it's not like it needs to be this deep transformational philosophical shift. It can just be a reel that makes you laugh, or a good basketball game, or spending time with somebody that you just really enjoy. I think that is what gives us the strength to do this hard work, to work on this place of how the fuck do I create a relationship with my body when all I want to do is run away from everybody trying to control it.
Yeah. It's interesting because, those things that you mentioned, even though we do the inside work, those things aren't inside us, right? We need to be going out into the world to be testing the waters, to be surrounded by people who support us or don't, because that's how we learn about ourselves even more than doing like the inside job, right?
Well, the inside job comes from, again, to use one of your favorite things, data. And some of that data is internal, but some of that data is external.
Yeah.
Right. I know we just recorded an episode that's going to come out in a few weeks, that we were talking about how we feel in different situations. Is that data?
Well, absolutely, right? Like we need that. And we need it in all kinds of places. We need it like as a menopause teacher and educator, we need that outside data in order to be able to evaluate what's right for us and what's going on inside of us. As a career engagement coach, we need that data when we are in a work environment that is something that feeds us or something that drains us. Like we need to be paying attention, not just doing the work, but we need to then be taking that work outside of us and putting it into the world so that we can start to evaluate what's good for us. And I'm using these weird terms that I don't normally use, but good and bad, right and wrong. But that really is based on what we need, right? And so it is so interesting because that is a part of what you and I talk about as well, is it's not just about how do we discover a new part of us, or how do we recreate a relationship with our bodies, or how do we get in touch with somatically with what's going on. It's also about how do we now take this into the world so that we know more about ourselves and the world that we're in, because only then can we create those ripples. We can't create ripples if we're just locked in our rooms reading every self-help book that's out there. It's about how do we take that now and make a difference or make a change. And it's not, it doesn't have to be big, right? Ripples in a pond don't only come from big rocks that you throw in there. It comes from the tiniest grain of sand. It comes from a tiny rain. It creates those ripples. And so that's what we need to be doing as well, is not just the inside job. It's the outside job too. Is that a movie, The Inside Job?
The inside job, it's a very different, and they're not talking about embodiment.
Oh, they should.
They should.
We should remake that. We should remake that movie and make it about what it should be about.
Yeah. I mean, Inside Out gets a little closer.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
That's true. Because it's dealing with feelings, right? And when we're talking to that demographic, although, I'm 54 and I love it. But when we're talking about that younger demographic, I think that's a good start with some embodiment. Is let's deal with some feelings.
Yeah.
Feelings are hard for folks.
Oh, absolutely. a big part of my journey has been trying to expand my feelings from, those top 5 words that we all grow up with. Because there's more than 5. And maybe we'll talk about that next time when we get together and have a chat. Is around like, how are we bringing that out? How are we bringing the inside out? Yeah. I love our conversations when it's 2 of us. These are conversations we have often. We just hit record and then now we got a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. So, Louise, I want to know so this is going to come out at the end of January. What do you have going on in the world that you want to either celebrate or let people know about?
Oh, yeah. So February 1st, I have a program launching. It's about how do we integrate our transition through menopause and the work that we're doing in our careers. They collide sometimes. And I have a 10-week course offering that's launching real soon. There might not be any spots left, but we'll put the link in the show notes so you can check it out or get on the waiting list for the next one.
Great.
How about you, Kim?
So I am already in the throes of the Pluto Rising program that we talked about a month or 2 ago. Super exciting to be in and leading this group through this year-long program. But I have 2 other group opportunities. People can come join me. The doors are always open for these, and you can come try them out with a either 2-week or 2-week or 4-week trial. One is they're both under the umbrella of Rising Visionaries. The first is to come in, try it out as a core member. There's 2 just open sessions a month where we have facilitated conversation. And the other is more of a mentorship where we really focus on being embodied business leaders. What does that mean? How do we use the tools of that are encompassed in our body, but also the tools of human design, and some of the elements that I bring into the Strengthscape self-mastery profile. I bring that in to support people through a mentorship program. And again, it's just it's monthly. And we get together in the mentorship program. There are opportunities to get together, I think 9 times a month. You don't obviously have to get together with all of them, but you can listen in whenever. None of these are courses, but it is all experiential, where there's a community aspect and there's also that opportunity to really learn what it means to be embodied as a business leader, particularly in the social impact space. But we have some folks that aren't in social impact that are just doing good in the world. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll include that in the show notes as well. So
love it. Thanks for the conversation today. Thanks for the laugh. It's always great to see your face.
Always. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks everyone. Bye for now. And that's all for this week's episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. We hope today's episode has sparked something within you. Remember, we're all on this journey together. If something did resonate with you today, why not share it with a friend who might need to hear it too? You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. Your feedback not only helps others find the show, but also helps us understand what's most valuable to you. Until next time, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and remember, we're walking right alongside you. Thanks for being part of our community.